General Manager Ryan Poles is not happy with the current state of the Chicago Bears offensive line. What's going on, guys? I'm back with another Chicago Bears offseason update video. There's going to be a lot of these in the coming days talking about free agency, the entire offseason. So if you guys want all the latest updates on the Bears, definitely be sure to subscribe to this channel. But into this video, I'll be talking about Ryan Poles' feelings towards the current Bears offensive line. Okay, so far Ryan Poles has given a bunch of press conferences, maybe not a bunch, but he's given a bunch of interviews, you know, a couple press conferences where he's talked about what he thinks about the Bears offensive line. And being a former offensive lineman, a guy that, you know, really prioritized the offensive line also in Kansas City, right? I mean, Kansas City, for the most part, had good offensive lines for Patrick Mahomes, besides for the 2020 Super Bowl when his starting two tackles got injured. And even then, you know, the following offseason, Ryan Poles and the Chiefs front office, they completely redid the entire Chiefs O-line and gave him, you know, some solid players up front, okay, just in one offseason. So clearly the O-line is very important to Ryan Poles. He's played this position before, so he knows O-line really well. And his comments this offseason about the Bears O-line make me feel like a lot of change could be coming. So I'm going to start by talking about an interview that he did with Kevin Fishbain of The Athletic. This actually happened about a month ago, so kind of old, but he did a interview with Kevin Fishbain talking about the Bears O-line, and he had some harsh words, guys, for what he saw on the tapes. I'm going to read some quotes from that interview. Again, shout out to Kevin Fishbain for doing this interview, but he said that it agitates me to see a quarterback get hit and be on the ground, and then watch the five guys and their body language. If I see my guy on the ground, I'm running over there, getting him up, making sure he's clean, ready to go. I don't know if I saw that enough in the tape that I watched, and that's critical, and also to protect your guy. If you see something cheap, something dirty, you need to set that tone that that's not going to happen, because if you do let it happen once, it's going to happen over and over again, and next thing you know, your quarterback is hurt. So that nastiness mentality is critical and is something we need to add. Wow, guys. I mean, thank God we have a general manager that finally is saying these things, that is calling out what he sees on tape, that is really speaking the truth and not really afraid to offend anybody, right? Because obviously current members of the Bears O-line are not going to take kindly to being called basically weak, right? Like for not standing up for their quarterback, for not, you know, getting into the face of the opposing defensive lineman. I feel like the only person that this quote doesn't apply to is rookie tackle Tevin Jenkins, right? Because if you guys remember, I think it was Monday Night Football during one of the later weeks of last year, where Tevin Jenkins actually got into the face of, you know, a bunch of Vikings players by himself to confront them and stand up for Justin Fields after he's getting cheap shotted the entire night. Tevin Jenkins was the only person on the O-line to do that. In fact, right tackle Germain Ifedi actually yelled at Tevin Jenkins for doing that, okay, for standing up for his quarterback. Apparently, Germain Ifedi took offense to that. I guess he didn't want the Bears to get the penalty, obviously, which we did get a penalty for that. But guys, in that situation, I'm okay with getting a penalty if your quarterback is getting cheap shotted the entire night. Like, do something, stand up for him. And seems like Tevin was the only guy bold enough to do that last year. So Tevin is the one guy I feel like is not going anywhere, because I feel like Ryan Poles is gonna love his mentality and, you know, the type of football that he plays for the Chicago Bears. If Tevin can just stay healthy, I feel like it could be a solid piece on the Bears offensive line. But for everybody else, man, they might be gone. Okay, maybe besides Larry Borom, because he's also pretty young. He also had pretty decent rookie season, so we'll see what happens with Larry. But everybody else, guys, like Cody Whitehair was way too soft last year. Sam Mustipher was way too soft as well. Germain Ifedi, obviously, I mean, if you're yelling at your own guys for standing up for your quarterback, you are obviously too soft. So again, I really like that Ryan Poles is calling all of this out already, okay? He's kind of giving the vision for what he wants to see in his offensive lineman. It's pretty much a nasty brand of football. He wants the guys up front to be bullies, okay, to stand up for their quarterback, to be willing to do whatever it takes to protect their quarterback, and to retaliate if somebody does something dirty to Justin Fields, okay? If somebody comes in on a late shot or something to the head of Justin Fields, you fight back, man. You let them know that's not okay, and that's what the great offensive lines in this league do, okay? You think that anybody is gonna mess with Aaron Rodgers? Like, obviously his offensive line is gonna stand up for him. Same with Tom Brady's offensive line. Same with all the other great quarterbacks. They have offensive linemen that stand up for them, and Justin Fields didn't last year. So I really love that Ryan Poles is gonna, you know, really make it a priority that those type of offensive linemen will be added to the Chicago Bears roster. So that interview was done about a month ago, but there's also a recent interview at the NFL Combine, which happened a few days ago, where he was pretty much just talking to the media. He was asked about, what changes he's looking to make on the Bears offensive line. And pretty much what he said was that we're going to change it up a little bit just in terms of the style. A lot of those guys, and the message has been clear, we've got to change body types a little bit. We've got to get lighter. We've got to get quicker. The Bears are expected to use a zone blocking scheme under new offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, so this makes a lot of sense. Okay, you still want those mean bully types of guys, but you want them to be more athletic. You want them to be able to move, to be able to pull, to be able to, go to the second level as well. And that doesn't really describe most guys in the Bears offensive line right now, which is why I feel like a lot of change could be coming. Does a guy like Cody Whitehair fit this mold whatsoever? No. Okay, flat out no. Does a guy like Sam Mustipher fit this mold whatsoever? No. Does a guy like Larry Borom fit this mold? I mean, Larry Borom, he showed a lot of promise last year, but he's not necessarily the most mobile, athletic guy. So you might want Larry to shed a few more pounds. I still think Larry is, staying here long term, right? Because he showed enough promise to the point where he's at the very least a swing tackle, right? Or maybe move him inside to guard. I don't know what happens with Larry, but I think he's staying. I think Tevin Jenkins also is staying just because both Larry and Tevin, they're pretty young. But everybody else, man, they could be gone. I know that James Daniels does fit this mold in terms of the, athleticism point of view, but does James Daniels have that mentality that Ryan Poles talked about earlier, okay? That dog mentality, be willing to sacrifice whatever to protect the quarterback, be willing to get into the face of the opposing defensive lineman. I don't know if James Daniels is that type of dog. He's a good blocker, he does his job. Last year he had a good season, but is he worth that whatever contract he's getting? Probably $50+ million contract. I don't know. Okay, it's going to be up to Ryan Poles to decide that, but I think there's a good possibility that 3, maybe even 4 members of the Bears offensive line next year could be different. Okay, I could definitely see, James Daniels not being brought back, Sam Mustipher just being cut, Cody Whitehair maybe being cut as well, even though he has a contract, a fairly decent sized contract. You do save money by putting a post June 1st cut on him, and next year you'll eat up some dead cap space. But if he's not good enough, then just get rid of him. Okay, you don't want to employ bad people just because of the money that you're paying them. And then maybe they move Tevin Jenkins to right tackle, maybe get a new left tackle on the open market, maybe pay a guy like Teron Armstead whatever he wants just to get a solid, reliable left tackle. I think that Olin Kreutz talked about this in his one of his post-game shows on NBC. Then maybe have Larry Borom be a swing tackle or whatever. Like, there's a lot of possibilities for what you could do with this offensive line. But regardless, I'm happy that Ryan Poles recognizes that a lot of change has to happen. Okay, Justin Fields was sacked way too many times last year. Obviously, some of them were his own fault, but the majority were not his fault. Okay, it was scheme and also poor blocking up front that led to him getting hit way too many times. Okay, not just him, Andy Dalton as well. I think Nick Foles also probably got sacked a few times in the one game that he started. And I'm also happy that Ryan Poles is calling out, the fact that our offensive lineman last year didn't stand up for Justin Fields. Every cheap shot that he took, there was no retaliation besides for one moment where Tevin Jenkins stood up for Fields. We need more of that on the Bears offensive line this following year. Now, we only have 5 draft picks this year, a decent amount of cap space, but a lot of spots to fill, so that cap space is going to run out fast. But there's a lot of ways to rebuild this offensive line, guys. And if you look at what Ryan Poles and the Chiefs did last year, they pretty much did this for the Chiefs in one offseason. So is it going to be tough to make this offensive line good in just one offseason? Yeah, but Ryan Poles has done it before, so hopefully he can do it again, because we need a good offensive line for Justin Fields in Chicago. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below, but as always, bear down.